do you do? Those scams happen to people all the time. Big tech sharing economy platforms like BNB and Uber are marketed as trustworthy, but a new book by a South African media scholar argues that they are highly vulnerable to scammers who spread delusive speech. Professor Julie Reid draws from first-hand accounts and over 600 cases from around the world of victims lured into scams of physical danger by fake Airbnb reviews and listings, providing a detailed case study. Well, we're going to be speaking to Professor Julie Reid, who is a professor of communication science and digital media expert who's stationed at the University of South Africa. Thank you so much, Dr. Julie. Thank you for joining us here on the show.
Thanks, Benjamin. Thanks, Palesa. And thanks to your listeners. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we are so trusting of digital platforms, whether they are our banking apps to our booking apps. We feel like they have done all the work. But this is something that we should actually be thinking more about, especially when you are looking at this from a holidaying perspective.
No, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. When all of these apps sort of became very popular, it was, just sort of post the crash, the financial market crash in 2008, and towards the end of that decade, these sharing economy platforms started becoming more and more popular, and we all jumped on them. Look, I mean, we loved them, right? As soon as you could book your first Uber, it was like really exciting, and who doesn't love Airbnb? So everybody was super excited about them to begin with. And as you say, you just sort of take for granted that the big tech companies that own these platforms will have done the due diligence. That was the assumption that we all made. As it turns out, that assumption was completely incorrect. So what I've tracked through my research is that the detailed case study that I did on Airbnb showed me that there are huge loopholes in Airbnb's verification measures that allow scammers and criminal syndicates to really misuse the platform. Mm-hmm. You should never assume that when you're booking accommodation on Airbnb, that accommodation has been properly verified. It hasn't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. Why is that the case? Because one would think that, the platforms themselves have good verification systems.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. We think of a platform like Airbnb as an accommodations booking platform, right? We think about it as the same way that we think about booking.com if you want to book a hotel or a room to stay somewhere. But actually, at the end of the day, that's not what Airbnb is. If I can just draw your attention for 1 second to platforms like, for example, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, we know that those are social media platforms, right? Because they're populated with user-generated content. Now, when you think about Airbnb, what you have to realize is that Airbnb is also actually a social media platform, because everything that you see on Airbnb is user-generated. The property listings are created by the hosts that are hosting the property. The reviews are authored supposedly by guests who have stayed at those properties. Everything that you see there is user-generated content. So actually, Airbnb is more of a social media platform.
Okay.
And what that means is that the same problems that you see on Facebook and Twitter or X and Instagram, YouTube, are then paralleled on Airbnb. So things like disinformation, things like hate speech, and things like using fake identities. So that just paints a bigger picture of what Airbnb really is and why unverified properties can actually make it onto the platform.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want us to take a break. These are interesting insights there. And I want us to look at some of the case studies that you looked at in your own research, Professor Julie Reid, because it's interesting that you looked at such a broad spectrum of cases. And I want us to just break down some of the key worries that you have. Hey, you might be a mother with family and, you're going to a particular location. The last thing that you need is to end up with your your family without any kind of locations to stay in, or find yourself in a very dangerous environment with strangers. What's your take on this one? Have you had a very unusual Airbnb experience? Give us your thoughts on that live stream that we have, or you can WhatsApp us on +2763 406 9126. Join us on our live stream. We've got Philemon Tembo Huemore is there as well on our live stream. We also have our guest live joining us there, Professor Julie Reid, also looking warm. It's a little bit cold in South Africa today, so we all have our jackets worn today. And yeah, man, we'll be back after this break to continue this conversation.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move.
Now, this is a conversation that definitely hits home with me because around the first weekend of last month, which was May, myself and a friend, we went out to a little short lift. That's what we call it here in South Africa when you're going for, a short holiday somewhere in your same province or maybe in another province, but just like easy to access, right? And we're going somewhere that's 4 hours away in a province called Limpopo here in South Africa. And so we decided we're going to take a 2-hour drive, sleep over on the Friday, and then take the next 2-hour drive the following morning to enjoy the weekend at a beautiful lodge. And so we take the 2-hour drive, we get to where our accommodation is supposed to be, a beautiful golf estate. We call the person that we've booked through Airbnb, which my friend had booked through Airbnb, and now we're at the gate and we're calling and we realize, hang on, something is just not right. In fact, it felt like something was not right when the booking was sent to me and I read through the Airbnb information. And this particular individual who was the host of the Airbnb had written the kinds of information that looked like they were maybe on a dating site and not a host of an Airbnb. So we laughed about it all the way to the accommodation.
That was the problem.
That was the problem. We were laughing and not taking it seriously. And to get there and understand that actually this person is not the real host and we have officially been scammed. So we speak to the original host who says, yeah, I actually don't have any accommodation and I'm not even around, so it's impossible for you guys to have been booked with me. Luckily, they were very helpful, found other hosts in the same golf estate. We eventually found someone who could accommodate us for the night, so we were saved because of that. But as I spoke to this other lady, the one who was put on the Airbnb as the host, I got an opportunity to speak to her and she's like, oh my goodness, I had no idea this is happening because I was on TikTok. I saw an offer that says that you can recommend nice holidays or places for people to go to and you can earn commission for your recommendations. And that's how she ended up hosting, but she had no idea she was actually listing as a host on Airbnb. It's important to speak about these kinds of scams because that's the conversation we're having right now. Professor Julie Reid speaks to us about Airbnb scams and how people are often lured, some to, a happy ending like myself and others to their detriment where people are being robbed or harmed. Yeah, I wasn't really happy, Professor, when this took place. It took a few hours for us to actually calm down and find a plan for the night. It was a happy ending for us, but it's not a happy ending for many out there.
No, absolutely. And I was nodding as you were telling your story because your story is actually incredibly common and far more common than I think a lot of people suspect. It's important to realize that, when we talk about these things, people don't only travel for holidays, though. There are sometimes very serious reasons why people travel. Some of the cases that I looked into when I assessed my 600 unique scam events on Airbnb, people were traveling because they had to see a specialist because one of their children needs specialist medical care. People travel for work. People travel because they're doing a job interview. So it's not just about people having their holidays ruined, although that is bad enough.
Yeah.
But I think that when it becomes dangerous, I'm very relieved to hear that your story had a happy ending, even though you probably had a few hours of panic and inconvenience.
Of course.
But where it really becomes worrying is when people travel to a location that is really unfamiliar to them. So perhaps you've gone to a foreign country, you've arrived in a foreign city, you don't speak the local language, you don't, because you're not in your home country, you don't have any friends or family close by that could come to your rescue if something went wrong. And then they arrive after a 12 or a 14-hour flight, they get off the plane, they go to the address listed on the booking confirmation, only to find that they are stranded because the property that they're supposed to be booking into doesn't exist. Now, what do? You're in a foreign country. You have nowhere to stay. Perhaps you've arrived, your flight has landed, as they often do, late at night. It's difficult to book into a new hotel at that time. Airbnb might give you a refund, but that refund will only appear in your bank account 15 days later.
Yeah.
So you might not even have the money to make a same-day booking at an emergency hotel accommodation. What do? I've read I've analyzed a number of cases where travelers like that have actually had to sleep on the streets.
Wow.
And have ended up in really serious, dangerous situations. I've also read through a lot of cases where the host themselves, the Airbnb host, is intending to do harm and using Airbnb as a means to lure victims towards themselves.
Sure.
So this is a case where the property actually does exist. It's a real property, but it's fundamentally the Airbnb business model is based on a really bad idea, and that is when you sign up and voluntarily book Airbnb accommodation, think about what you're actually signing up for. You're signing up to voluntarily sleep over in the house of a complete stranger who you have never met before, and that stranger has access to the place where you are going to be sleeping because they have a copy of the keys. So I assess multiple cases where, unfortunately and very sadly, Airbnb guests were lured into these situations. They were then either extorted and held hostage for additional money, they were robbed or they were burgled, or they were raped and murdered by persons who had access to the property. So the business model of Airbnb is definitely one that requires more caution on the part of people who use the platform.
Yeah. Well, these platforms are supposed to offer us convenience and a simple way to sort of bypass, the red tape when trying to get to something. But of course, all of this is something that we always have to be aware of. And people are now somewhat afraid of, many platforms like Airbnb because they're afraid of some of the horror stories that come out of it. In your book, Delusive Speech and the Sharing Economy, what is it that we can do? I mean, how do we identify this delusive speech and how do we assure that we can still get the convenience and try and be safe at the same time?
Or should we still be using Airbnb?
That's a great question. So should we still be using Airbnb? I don't want to deny the fact that Airbnb is a much loved company by many, many people all over the world, and for good reason. It did offer us a really great service for a very long time, until it was invaded by scammers and criminals. So I'm not going to say that it isn't one of the more convenient sharing economy platforms and one of the more exciting. And definitely one of the most successful. But what can we do to keep ourselves safe on the platform? Well, the first thing is a realization. You have to realize that when you are booking accommodation on the platform and you're going through all of the listings, just be aware that a fake listing or a scam listing is actually going to be indistinguishable from a real one. And the first so that's the first step, is you just have to be aware. I'd like to say that you should look out for red flags, but a lot of the time the scammers have become so sophisticated that there just aren't any red flags to see. How are you honestly going to tell the difference between a fake listing and a genuine listing on Airbnb?
Well, we laughed at a red flag. We laughed at a red flag and we didn't look away.
So that's great. But oftentimes that's not the case because many of these scams are actually set up by fairly sophisticated criminal syndicates with many different fake hoaxes working together. And so they're actually quite sophisticated, and it doesn't read so much like a Tinder profile, but it's actually quite professional. So my advice, if you are looking to travel via Airbnb, the first and best thing that you can do is actually talk to people who you know and trust, people who are known to you in your social circles, in your families, and ask them for recommendations and say, hey, I'm going to this city or this location. Have you stayed in an Airbnb there before? Is it real? Does it actually exist? How is the host? Was the host friendly and communicative? So to get direct recommendations from people that you know and trust. If that isn't an option, then I always tell travelers that Google Street View is your friend, because scammers can fake a listing, but they cannot hack Google Street View. So if you're looking at an accommodation listing, go onto Google Street View and try to determine if the property listing is actually at the location that it claims to be at. Spy on it on Google Street View. The resource is there.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, another piece of advice that I have is, if you can't,
Professor, can we just wrap it up? Sorry to just give us your final sentiments, just in 30 seconds. We're about to wrap things up. We've got the news waiting for us.
No problem. So I would just say that when you are traveling these days, it's always very important to have a plan B. Make sure that you have a backup plan for when things go wrong. Always have travel insurance, and try to do as much research as you can before getting on the plane and going to the location.
Well, this has been a very well education conversation, very well informed. Thank you so much, Professor. This has been very helpful. And maybe these things that we take for granted are things that we should actually be cautious about. So thank you for your warnings, but thank you also for your informed viewpoint.
My pleasure. Nice talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Professor Reed speaking to us about Airbnb scams. If you've also been scammed like myself, you can let us know how and where. 9:31 Central Africa time. It's time for our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning, guys. Let's bet off with the cricket news. The Proteas men's cricket team coach Shukri Conrad has avoided the C word in favor of calling his players quietly confident as they prepare to face Australia in the final of the ICC World Test Championship at Lord's in London today. Conrad says while the Proteas bowlers are well renowned, his batting group is less well known but has delivered the goods in the test matches when called upon. Despite finishing on top of the ICC World Test Championship points table, Proteas know they are the rank outsiders going into the final of the World Test Championship. Coach Shukri Conrad says he may not have the star batters, but is confident they will deliver when their time comes.
Obviously, the inexperience of the batters is very apparent in terms of number of tests played, rankings on the ICC ranking. So I think it's very normal to chat about the bowlers when you've got guys like Kagiso Rabada, ranked 2 in the world, and Marco and Keshav. But on the batting front, look, I think there's a quiet confidence amongst the batting group. They come off a lot of confidence, having gotten hundreds, different players at different stages. So, yeah, whilst they might not have the superstar names amongst them, I think as a collective, we're pretty confident.
As to the Proteas' chances, Conrad is hoping to use the Proteas' tenacity to probe for any vulnerability in the ranks of the baggy green.
We're here, and that's all that matters. We get a chance to walk away as the World Test champions, playing Australia. Doesn't get any bigger than that. So, yeah, what's gone before counts for absolutely nothing at the minute. And we're quietly confident going into this game that we can pull together. They're a confident bunch. We play well as a unit, and if there are any vulnerabilities amongst them, I'm sure we'd be able to exploit that.
The match between the two nemesis is expected to begin at 11 a.m. Central African time. On to football news. Eswatini go head-to-head with Tanzania in a must-win match at the Free State Stadium in their final Group C fixture of the ongoing COSAFA Cup. Eswatini is fully aware that anything short of victory will draw the curtain on their campaign. Seeded into one of the 2-3 team brackets, the Kings Shield currently sits second after collecting a solitary point from their opener and must now edge past the already eliminated Taifa Stars to secure a place in the knockouts. Junior Springbok head coach Kevin Foote has announced his World Rugby Under-20 Championship squad. The tournament is expected to start on the 29th of June to the 19th of July. According to Foote, the final selection process was a very difficult task and he and the coaching staff are very pleased with the final squad. Lock Riley Norton will retain his captaincy alongside Piwa Yingosi Kupega and prop Ian van der Merwe Flyhalf have not played for the SA Under-20s before, while Jakob Krobelaar, Lock, Stephanus Linde, number 8, and Jaco Williams, outside back, are back in the squad after missing the recent Under-20 Rugby Championship in Gqeberha. And the Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparations for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championship set to take place at the Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani in Nairobi from the 14th of June to the 9th of July. Head coach Mossad Elwati confirmed that training is already underway with players grouped to work on fitness and technical skills. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Kwa nini wanamuziki wengi sana wa kizazi kipya hawafiki mbali pale wanapofanya muziki?
Ni kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza ambacho naweza nikaongelea nikagusia zaidi sana ni kusema kuwa wale wasanii wanapotoa ngoma yao ya kwanza ikiwa kama kahiti kidogo tu, wanaanza kutamba mitaani, wanaonekana kama wapo majuu zaidi sana.
Kuna wanamuziki wengine ambao wanakimbilia kwa waganga wa jadi. Hivi muziki na dawa vinaendana?
Kitu cha kwanza naweza nikasema ni kuwa muziki na dawa haviendani. Lakini muziki ni kipaji.
Kuna watu wengine wanashutumu wasanii wengine kwamba wanaroga.
Wanaroga, wale wasanii kama wanaroga ni kutokujiamini tu. Lakini kitu cha muhimu sana ni kipaji.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move.
All right, so let's quickly move on and get our economics update.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Ben, and good morning. The South African Parliament has highlighted the urgent need to hold accountable those responsible for creating ghost positions in government departments. This after Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Jan de Villiers, revealed that a syndicate was orchestrating the creation of ghost employees through systemic corruption. He says that the extent of the problem is unknown. De Villiers also stressed the importance of conducting physical audits to detect ghost employees on the payroll.
We suspect that this type of syndicated criminal activity in the state is actually supported by way more individuals, because you almost need an ecosystem to keep those people on the system and keep paying them their salaries and their leave days and their bonus. So I think that identifying the ghost is one thing, but very importantly, there needs to be investigation and prosecution and then punishment. People going to jail for the creation of these ghost employees.
Results of a study that South African Financial Services Group, Nedbank, and the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers have released has highlighted challenges that local manufacturers are facing. They include pressure to shift to low-carbon operation or losing the competitiveness, as well as lack of access to affordable technology and capacity to measure emissions. These have led to uncertainty around reporting frameworks and the cost of compliance. Trade, Industry and Competition Department's Lester Bower.
But it is always not an easy space, because we do have to deal with the issues of multilateralism. So we sit in the WTO, so we cannot just ignore that we signed to these things. We cannot just tomorrow go and all of a sudden do as our esteemed world president and put 110 tariffs there on the world and say we're going to stop everybody from coming in here.
South Africa's Basic Education Minister, Siphiwe Gwahube, says the Government of National Unity has a mammoth task of ensuring that more job opportunities are created for the country's youth. She says it is heartbreaking that many young graduates are still unemployed. Gwahube was part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's engagement with beneficiaries of the Presidential Youth Programme in Pretoria.
It's heartbreaking, and that is the reality of our unemployment crisis in South Africa. There are people who are educated, who find themselves applying just to be education assistants. And it's heartbreaking because those people should be in full-time employment. And so we celebrate this opportunity for young people to be able to be upskilled and in places of work for 6 months.
The Food and Agriculture Organization says that the camel deserves a grand celebration for its contribution to existence. This is the regional forum on the International Year of Camelids and Sustainable Livestock Transformation in Africa is underway in Nairobi, Kenya. The 3-day high-level event is co-organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the African Union Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources. Africa is home to over 80% of the world's one-humped camels. Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa, Abebe Haley Gabriel.
One is to celebrate a very important animal in Africa, particularly in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, in North Africa. And this is camel. This is the International Year of Camel, and we thought it deserves a regional forum to celebrate its contribution.
Top Chinese and U.S. negotiators say they have agreed a framework on trade. This comes after 2 days of talks in London aimed at resolving tensions. China's international trade representative, Li Changgang, has described the talks as rational and candid. The BBC's Stephen McDonnell has the details.
Now, it's described as a framework. I mean, who knows what that means? And also, we don't even know what's in the framework. Well, I mean, what areas does it cover, apart from how widespread it is to be? However, it does seem to include a loosening up of the restrictions on Chinese companies from selling rare earths to the US. And in the other direction, it does seem to involve an easing of US restrictions on supplying microchip technology to China.
Let's have a look now at your financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 450. Botswana 13 pula 21. Kenya 128 shilling 417, and Zambia 25 kwacha. In BRICS countries, we'll start in Brazil. The dollar there will cost you 5.56. Russia 78 rubles 63. India 85 rupees 59. China 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 71 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities markets now: gold $3,338, platinum $1,221 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $66.71 a barrel. Now, for any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Holy fire, holy water, holy money, only money, only money, only money. We are woody fire, woody thunder.
12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu. Getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubini Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some Lucifer knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu. Getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubini Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some Lucifer knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10, we take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising.
Up in the morning, it's not okay on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
I shouldn't feel like that, right?
Apparently that's a new thing, the morning club before work. Have you heard of that?
No, I'm
it's
not
called,
doing
It's
it.
called the coffee rave.
I'm not coming to a coffee rave. That is Starboy with one titled Soko. Thank you, Mike Ka, for joining us on that live stream. Mwala Sinyinda, we see you as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on that live stream. Coming in and out, we always appreciate it. Nandipa Bestman was there earlier on, and also we saw Machitidwe Sadipala joining us on our live stream. It's also cool having you there, so you can come in and out and check what's happening in our studios. You don't have to stay for long. I know your days and mornings can be a little bit busy, but if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. But come in and just hang out and find out what's happening in our studio. We're speaking about Airbnb.
Yes. It's terrible to know that someone can be scammed. And, I just relayed a story about my scam just last month. I wasn't the one personally scammed. My friend was the one who was scammed.
I'm glad that you're okay.
Yes.
And then you are with us right now, because something worse could have happened, right?
Absolutely.
I know it's easy to laugh about something when it happens like in a light way.
Yeah.
But the examples that the professor gave us, where people got hurt, some people got raped, some people really got their lives changed to the worse, that can happen to anyone. So people need to be careful out there.
And the unfortunate part, as I was saying, my friend who booked the Airbnb was so shocked, because I'm speaking about someone who is constantly using the platform. I'm not saying once a year, at least like once a month, to say the least. And if you've used a platform like this for many years and never experienced any problems, you don't expect anything to happen. And that's where you've let your guard down. And when something like this happens, you completely off guard and you don't know what to do, even if the results can be much worse coming out of a situation like that.
Yeah, man. Airbnb, have you ever experienced something dodgy there? Or maybe you've had a good experience. You're like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Let us know on our WhatsApp number, +2763 406 9126. Can text us or voice note us there. Let's take a break. We'll be back. It's 9:50 Central African Time.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Kwa nini wanamuziki wengi sana wa kizazi kipya hawafiki mbali pale wanapofanya muziki?
Ni kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza ambacho naweza nikaongelea nikagusia zaidi sana ni kusema kuwa wale wasanii wanapotoa ngoma yao ya kwanza ikiwa kama kahiti kidogo tu, wanaanza kutamba mitaani, wanaonekana kama wapo majuu zaidi sana.
Kuna wanamuziki wengine ambao wanakimbilia kwa waganga wa jadi. Hivi muziki na dawa vinaendana?
Kitu cha kwanza naweza nikasema ni kuwa muziki na dawa haviendani. Lakini muziki ni kipaji.
Kuna watu wengine wanashutumu wasanii wengine kwamba wanaroga.
Wanaroga, wale wasanii kama wanaroga ni kutokujiamini tu. Lakini kitu cha muhimu sana ni kipaji.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepu Kholikweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to Eastern Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochi Tika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodishkopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning.
So
voiced. Be on the move with Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa. We get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joel Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some Lucifer knowledge. Kalodiscopia, 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10
to the Kwaito days, Uzozi Soul.
But it's also been like, giving it a different vibe. It's definitely very different from the original
Kwaito
song.
vibes. Yeah, and that features Diamonds of Guijo and Azul Serene. And we want to get your thoughts. Have you ever had an experience on Airbnb where it just went haywire and you just got somewhere and you found yourself in a situation where you're like, you know what, my instinct is not actually telling me good things about this. Let me get out of the situation. Or maybe you've actually had good experiences on Airbnb. We're not just trying to diss Airbnb here on the show. We want to get your thoughts because we're speaking about some of the occurrences that happen that are not so great on Airbnb. Well, we're going to be moving into our second hour, and we're going to be also speaking about population and the fact that, just generally people are like, no, we don't want more kids, or we don't want any kids, just because the situation is not looking good. The economy is not great. The future feels uncertain. So having kids is the last option.
Yeah, and it's not even those economic factors that have people saying they don't want children. But I think what we don't realize is that even though we're making those decisions for ourselves for those particular reasons, these are much larger social issues that are taking place in our societies that are not allowing us to have more kids. And sometimes that decision happens not because you just don't love kids. It maybe is because of these societal issues that impact how you think about raising or having children.
Yeah, it took me a while to actually have a child. I was very deliberate for many years of not having a child. I was kind of like, no, I do not want a child. And even now that I do have a little boy, who's going to be turning 1 year just in a few days' time. Really excited about that. I'm always questioning, did I do the right thing? Not because I don't love my son, but I'm looking at the future. I'm like, is he going to have a good life? Is he going to be someone who's actually going to feel like, he belongs in this world? Because I feel like we all need to feel like we belong.
Yeah.
It's important for us to all have that feeling like we are in this world and we want to thrive and flourish. And I'm always questioning that. Is he going to be able to live in that way? Is he going to be able to fulfill his capacity? And I'm sure if you're a mother or a father, or even if you are a young person yourself, you're thinking about these factors like, okay, even if I do have a child, what's going to happen to them? Okay, if I don't have one, should I actually have one when it feels like I'm also having a hard time in this situation?
Sure, man. Well, let's talk about that in the next hour of the show. It's a very important conversation, especially because we hear a lot of people speaking about the falling birth rates, much worse in other parts of the world. Not so bad here on the African continent because we still have a thriving population and a much bigger, youth population than the rest of the world. So our birth rates do continue, but it seems like more modern African people and more younger African people are starting to think a little bit more intentionally about the decision of making children. And in fact, a lot of them are saying, yeah, I actually don't think I want them. And even those who do are saying, well, just one will be enough. I don't think I'll go over one because of these certain issues or these certain societal things that are taking place in the world. world. So it's not even just an issue of not having children at all. It's also an issue of not having as many children as you would like to have.
Yeah, that's the conversation we're going to be having a little bit later on here on the show. We want to get your thoughts on these conversations. So do let us know what you think on them. And remember, if you're listening to us on various platforms or you're stuck on one platform, remember that we're making sure that you can actually find us in multiple ways because we are a multi-platform radio station. Remember the SABC Plus app. We always remind you about it. Download it on your mobile phone. You can also go to the website www.sabcplus.com and you can check out Channel Africa content there. It's easy to actually do that. Just sign up and just get access to data or Wi-Fi, and it's easy to access our content here on Channel Africa. Well, we're moving into the second hour of the show. We can never start any hour without getting our latest news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories: Asawa clashes over the funeral arrangements for former Zambian President Edgar Lungu and a new report on the humanitarian situation in Sudan. Good morning, I'm Jolani Tulo-Webe. The Zambian government and former President Edgar Lungu's political party are at loggerheads over his funeral arrangements. The government announced that there would be a state funeral and declared that the official venue for mourning would be a lodge it owns in the capital Lusaka. The PF has dismissed this plan, directing mourners to its headquarters instead. Joey Lihodi has the story.
The standoff between former President Edgar Lungu's family, the government, and Lungu's political party, the Patriotic Front, has left mourners confused about how exactly the former president should be honored. Family lawyer Makebi Zulu has told the BBC that the family is not opposed to a state funeral, but have insisted on choosing who will preside over it. Then there is the official book of condolence in which mourners can pay tributes to Lungu. The government has set up an official book at the lodge, but the PF has urged people to sign theirs instead at their headquarters. There was also different views on when Lungu's body should be repatriated, with the PF insisting that it wants to create a safe passage.
The war in Sudan has pushed millions to the brink, with South Darfur among the hardest hit regions. A new report by Doctors Without Borders, Voices from South Darfur details the violence, hunger and widespread insecurity facing civilians, particularly women and children. Sudan's conflict between the army and rival rapid support forces has displaced millions and split the country into rival zones of control, with the RSF still deeply embedded in Western Sudan. Humanitarian Affairs Advisor for MSF, Dr. Carl McNally, explains.
We see staggering rates of sexual violence, and when we look at this, we see also some very concerning observations within the data. Not only do we have hundreds of survivors coming to clinic and coming for care since we opened services in the middle of last year, but what we notice is that we have high confidence that this is really just the tip of the iceberg, and we know that there's a lot of women who are unable to access care. We also know that despite the fact that the conflict has now been going on for more than 2 years, amongst the hundreds of survivors that we have now treated, we see more than 50% of those survivors have been attacked by non-civilians.
The Eastern Cape government in South Africa has confirmed that 11 people are missing following floods that heavy rain caused in the province yesterday. The minibus in which those who are missing were travelling in was swept into a river in Colony. Most of them are believed to be learners. The death toll stands at 9, provincial government spokesperson Kusela Ranki.
In the Arfrenzo area, just outside Kokstad, that were trapped in the snow, and farmers in that area were able to assist and ensure that those people are able to at least to be in a safe environment. And also in the Buckley area, people that were trapped in the snow in that area were rescued. And that was the only pass in our province as of late last night that was still very much closed, and we will assess the situation again this morning.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed over 30 people to form the Eminent Persons Group that will guide the national dialogue. They include former Independent Electoral Commission Chairperson Brigalia Bam, former Constitutional Court Justice Edward Cameron, Banyana coach Desiree Ellis, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi, and former MP Lindiwe Mazibuko. Ramaphosa made the announcement yesterday. He says the group reflects South Africa's diversity as well as a proven commitment to the advancement of social cohesion and nation building.
Through the national dialogue, we seek a shared vision of what it means to be a South African and develop a new national ethos and common value system. It is an opportunity to forge a new social compact for the development of our country, a compact that will unite all South Africans with clear responsibilities for different stakeholders: government, business, labor, civil society, men and women, communities, and citizens.
Demonstrations in solidarity with protesters in Los Angeles against the Trump administration's immigration raids are gaining traction in other U.S. cities. In New York, where 2,000 people demonstrated, police have arrested dozens of people blocking traffic. Dozens more have been arrested in Chicago. Earlier, a U.S. judge denied an emergency request from California's governor to block the use of federal troops that President Donald Trump sent to Los Angeles to quash protests. Gavin Newsom says Trump's decision is illegal.
This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder.
Recapping the top story, the Zambian government and former President Edgar Lungu's political party are at loggerheads over his funeral arrangements. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo-Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Hey, we're in the second hour of On the Move right here on Channel Africa. This is where we give you that African perspective, and we don't just give it to you. You're a part of that African perspective. We're all in this together, and we love sharing this dynamic African space with you. So keep tuning in on www.channelafrica.co.za. You can stream us live from there. You can also stream us from the SABC Plus app, an app that you can find from any app store, and definitely find Channel Africa there under the radio section. Our audio bouquets are DSTV channel 802 and OpenView HD channel 628. Are there reasons why you do not want to have children, or you only want to have a certain number of children? Yeah, there's been a lot of conversations about falling birth rates all across the globe, and it seems like more and more modern populations are finding reasons to either not have children at all, remain child free, or maybe just decrease the amount of children that they initially would have wanted. Well, we're looking at a report that looks at the world population and some of the reasons why people are sort of straying away from fertility and child bearing, but also what some of the factors are that are having people stay away from having more children. It's actually more complicated than you would think, because something like this seems like an individual decision, but even in these individual decision makings, we are highly impacted by our surroundings, our society, societies and some of the socio-economic impacts that have a say over whether or not we decide to have children and how many we decide to have. We're going to unpack this conversation with Kenneth Juma, an epidemiologist and senior research officer within the Sexual, Reproductive and Maternal Newborn Child and Adolescent Health Unit in the Africa Population and Health Research Center. They'll be joining us to speak about this in this hour of the show. And if you're someone who can relate, if you're an African who's anywhere in the world who can relate to the fact that you either want to remain child-free or you don't want to have more children, what are the issues that impact that particular decision for you?
Hey, Penyo Seitamo, I see you there on our live stream. Chenga Joseph, always listening to us from Mombasa Road in Nairobi. Thank you for streaming us live as well. If you want to come in and out, you are welcome to on our live streams just to check the vibe in our studio, but also to let us know what you think of the different subject matters. But it's also cool when you let us know, like Joseph, where you are actually listening to us from. It's always a great way for us to know what's going out there in the streets of the African continent. And if you are even listening to us outside the continent, you're also welcome to come into those live streams as well. You are listening to Channel Africa on other platforms as well. DSTV Channel 802, OpenView 628. Don't forget our website, www.channelafrica.co.za.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chairman.
The Confederation of African Athletics, CAA President Mr. Hamad Kalkaba Malbum, talk to us about the state of athletics in Africa as it stands, and what picture are you looking at 5 years later?
Yeah, athletics in Africa is strong. We are able to organize our major events in time. Like this year, we will have the under 20 and under 18 African Championship in Nigeria. Next year, we will have the senior in Ghana. In 2027, we will go back to Algeria to organize the under 18 and under 20. And then 2028, we will have the senior championship in Gaborone in Botswana. Well, by this program, we can increase our performance. And at the same time, we are considering the fact that within the British Federation, they are identifying young talent every year within their national program, within the scholarship championship. And so the athletics in Africa is in good standard.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. June is Youth Month in South Africa. Celebrate Africa's young voices with us. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Call us on +27 63 406 9126.
I can see my whole world changing.
And contribute to the conversation. Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
This song has a line that I love so much in the isiXhosa language. It says, Andinayo nesentem daga. So I went down to the Eastern Cape. So I went to Yanga and said, Yanga, tell me here, what does Andinayo nesentem daga mean?
If I say Andinayo nesentem daga, it means that I do not have any money on me. I do not have money to give to you.
Interesting, because in Chivenda I would just say Atinana Peni ndo cherungwe. I wonder if you have that expression in your home language when you want to say you're broke, but in a very creative way. What do you say? I'd like to hear from you.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege. Keeping you on the know and on the move.
It's 12 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. We're in the second hour of On the Move right here on Channel Africa. The world is a very fascinating place, and it's transforming at really breathtaking rates and at a very different scale and pace than we have in the past. In fact, global fertility rates are declining at worrying speeds for many, and the human population is projected to reach its crest within the century and then fall. In fact, one 1 in 4 people around the world currently live in a country where the population size is estimated to already have peaked, and that means the population size is only going to decrease. I don't know if you've heard of people talking about the falling birth rates and the fear of the population collapse. It's actually not that people don't want kids. In fact, most people actually do want kids. The real challenge is that there's rising costs of living, unfair gender expectations peak that, and the uncertainty about the future that's making it really, really hard for many people to start or grow their families in a way that they initially wanted to. We're exploring the focus on fertility drop, but also, some of the factors that are impacting, the societal factors that are impacting people either not wanting children at all or not wanting to have as many children as they initially would have wanted. We're unpacking this conversation this morning with Kenneth Juma, an epidemiologist and senior research officer within the Sexual, Reproductive, Maternal, Newborn, Child and Adolescent Health Unit at the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya. Kenneth, thank you so much for your time this morning. Yeah, it seems like the younger populations, the Gen Zs, the millennials are sort of choosing different, and it seems to us like they're being really intentional about why and how they're giving birth.
Yeah, absolutely. That is totally true. There is indeed greater consciousness among younger people in terms of their choice to give birth, to have families, to have more children, certainly because of much more broader macroeconomic factors, including the state of the economy, the fear around their futures, uncertainty about their future, opportunities for work, challenges about housing, the cost of healthcare, the cost of education, and many other factors. So these factors put collectively are driving a certain pressure among younger people to either delay the beginning, giving birth, or decide to totally keep that option out of the table until when they feel they have certainty around, their economic and social well-being.
And I guess in some aspects it's a good thing, right, that we're seeing more people being intentional and actually thinking about the process of bringing children into the world and what that would mean, because it seems like, historically people just knew that, okay, you get old, you have children, that's just how it is. But if you go on, platforms like social media, you see more and more people discussing the reasons why they either want to remain child-free or they've only decided to have a certain number of children. Should we be seeing this as a positive thing, or maybe that we're actually much more impacted by these societal issues than historically we were?
No, so that's a very important point. Indeed, this should have been a very positive trend for a long time now, for decades. From since there was the advent of family planning, the idea was that people should have sustainable family sizes, the number of children, a number of people in a household that they can sustain based on the economic, opportunities. However, when the trend now turns towards a situation where fertility is declining and declining drastically to the extent to which then over time there will be other challenges that were not necessarily anticipated. One of those challenges is that there is the demographic dividends that are supposed to be achieved by a growing younger population. Now, when a certain age group is exposed to this drastic drop in population increase, then at some point in the future we'll see chronic loss of labor force and productivity. And when there's loss in productivity and loss in labor force, then again you'll see economic crisis and challenges that sometimes are not intended but yet then occur as a result of this unplanned drastic reduction in fertility trends. However, over time again we know that yes, most of African countries, especially urban settings, are overpopulated. But they're not overpopulated because in a country there's unsustainable population sizes. It's overpopulated because of unplanned rural-urban migration. So while the driver has been to allow us achieve that sustainable population size, the goal is not to drastically reduce fertility or altogether stop fertility.
That's so interesting that you say that. It's intriguing for me because just generally in the past few years, the big narrative around Africa's population is the fact that we have a huge youth population, but also that we have a growing population, and there's always like these projections of high population growths, even when you project into 2050. However, this particular State of World Population 2025 report kind of speaks of a different narrative. They kind of challenges people's realities on the ground on why they would actually want children, or also the reasons why they can't have children. Can you contrast those two dynamics of the projections and the realities on the ground? Is it even possible to do so?
Yes, it is possible to do so. It is possible to do so by addressing not the symptom, but rather the challenge, or the main reason why people are deciding increasingly to either have fewer children or not have children at all, or have less than the children that they had intended in the first place. Okay, so one of the main driving reasons for this particular trend, or sort of a reversal in what we've been talking about for a long time, is really the economic anxiety. Economy is the number one driver, also cited in the report just released yesterday by the UNFPA, as the leading driver for people having less than desired family sizes. Now, what has governments done? Governments have tended to incentivize or give bonuses to families or couples that then have had children as an encouragement to have more. But that's not the challenge, because the bonus is so insufficient to cover what is seen as the long-term cost of having a child or more children. Okay, for every child there's additional money to pay for healthcare. For every child there's additional money and additional time off to be taken by the woman to offer care, and this time taken off by the woman sometimes, or even the man, is not paid for. That's one. Or number two, even if it's paid for at a very low rate that people do not find it economically sustainable to then have children. Okay. Yeah. Now, what the government really should do is a much more broad-based kind of intervention that addresses the cost of living, addresses the cost of having children, the cost of education for children. In some countries, they introduced free primary and secondary education, and that was a great incentive, because then it allowed greater enrollment of children to school. And once children are enrolled in school, of course, that protects them against many of the poor, sometimes sexual and reproductive health, but also social outcomes. But the government needs to do more, especially in addressing some of those microeconomic drivers.
Some of these drivers, Kenneth, are quite tangible. The economy is something tangible. If people have much better economic chances, they might want to have more of these children. But some are intangible, like you just spoke. Women have to take more time off. So I want us to also speak about how gender inequality is deepening the crisis of the fertility drop all across the world. It's 21 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. We'll continue this conversation after the break.
Hey guys, question. Have you thought about what happens between 9 o'clock until midday, Saturday and Sunday? Well, it's me. Those that know me call me the fun police, and I'm that girl, that voice on your radio. My name is Pule Mulebati. I'm all about the finer things in life. Where to go, what to wear, who to see, and ultimately what to do. We aspire to bring you the best in travel, entertainment, with a dash or maybe a dose of laughter. And then of course we switch things up a bit when we look at technology. I love what's happening with AI, because you blink, something new pops up. So the challenge is constantly there. I'm learning every single time on the show. So catch me every single Saturday and Sunday at 9 a.m. until 12 midday Central African time, Baba.
Embrace our young voices this month. Channel Africa, celebrating Youth Month. Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move.
Hey, you're listening to On the Move with myself, Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa. I see you, Lazaro Mwanza. You came into our live feed. Samson Kamanga, we see you as well. Afiani Zurike, we see you as well. Thank you for coming in and out that live stream as we continue our conversations here on the Move. We're speaking to Kenneth Juma, who is a senior research officer within the sexual, reproductive, maternal, newborn child and adolescent health unit at the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya. We're speaking about the State of World Population 2025 report. It's actually saying, look, people are thinking about childbirth and their fertility a little bit differently. They're looking at the challenges around them and making huge considerations around those. And Kenneth has been speaking about this to help us understand this new feature that we are seeing in how people are looking at, either wanting more children or not. So that's an interesting one. Kenneth, let's speak about the gender narratives here, because it's very interesting that women are also feel like they're making themselves, especially in the younger generations, felt in terms of why they make the decision to have children or not to have children. It feels like they are standing with a sense of knowing that they've got a dynamic of choice, where with their male counterparts, it feels like they feel like an imposition still, and the traditional norms continue to say there's an expectation for them to actually impose this as a reality for themselves to have children.
Yes. So yeah, that's totally right and very accurate. The way you have sort of presented it. The thing is that traditionally the role of the man was to be the provider, and sometimes the role of the woman in the traditional setting was to be sort of this, homekeeper, the person who brings up children and is always available. However, with transitions over time, we see a greater contribution of women to the economy, a greater contribution of women to being employed in formal workplaces. So as a result, there has been a transition and a shift in terms of how things are now being done compared to in the past. What happens now is that more women are pursuing career goals, and career goals take time, take a lot of effort and resources, and as they are pursuing education and then career prospects, at times it leads to delays in beginning to start a family. Okay, as that is happening at the time when they want to start a family, it's a balance between my career prospects and economic certainty in future vis-a-vis settling down to start raising a family. Now, the role of men is also in question, because women are tending now to decide to either delay or be very intentional with when and with who to give birth. And as such, if they feel that the situation, the context is not guaranteeing that future economic security, then they would rather pursue their education or career goals up to a time when they feel they can achieve, that certainty. However, what then that does is that it delays the onset of giving birth. When you start giving birth, perhaps after the age of 30, you have a limited time to give birth to more children compared to someone who was married by the age of 19 or 20 and started giving birth immediately. So all these dynamics are then playing a role in the reducing fertility. In Kenya, for instance, compared to 1989 to now, women are opting to giving birth to less than 3 children compared to over 7 in 1989. That's a drastic
7.
Compared to 7 in 1989.
Wow.
So that's a drastic reduction over a very short period of time, and partly driven by these anxieties around economic certainty, but also the role of each gender. Now, one key example I would also like to give is when then the woman decides to give birth and has to take care of the home and the children. Again, what happens to her career? What happens to, can she still keep the job and still raise that family? Sometimes the options are limited. It's only COVID that came and showed us that we can be more flexible in how we operate our working hours, working from home, alternative working, shifts and so on and so forth, that offer that lens into how employers can be more flexible. But otherwise, for a long time, it has been that if you cannot do 8 to 5, sometimes there's no job for you.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the fertility element, how does that feature into this one? Because we can't just speak about it in terms of just a decision-making perspective, but also from that biological aspect.
Exactly. So, indeed, we live in a very pro-natalist society where desire for children is high.
Yo, you just gave us a big word.
Desire for children is very high.
Okay.
And children are seen as a resource, as a guarantee for the future, right? To take care of you in your old age. Lack of children is profoundly abhorred sometimes in the traditional setting. And sometimes a man or a woman is labeled names if they are unable to give birth. However, now the biological role is that infertility has also increased dramatically for a variety of reasons, including some of the chronic diseases that are now more prevalent in this era or age. And because of infertility is high, we know that access to infertility treatment is also pathetically low, almost unavailable in the public healthcare setting. It's only available in public healthcare setting. And in those private healthcare settings, infertility treatment is extremely expensive. So it becomes a rich people's problem. And those who are poor have, you are shunned and almost, condemned to permanent lack of children because you cannot afford that care that then can allow you to restore some level of infertility. So as a result of that and the lack of attention to any efforts towards expanding access to fertility treatment, then we also see women and men and couples that desire to have children but are unable to have children because they are dealing or experiencing or struggling through infertility.
Mm-hmm. We have a minute left, and I don't know how we're going to wrap this one up, but I guess we have to just sum up just this new dynamic. I think it is a new dynamic because it seems more pronounced, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key messages to throw out there is that the government needs to act right and not sort of inject these short-term micro interventions that do not address the long-term anxieties and challenges that people have, even as they desire children. Number two is that fertility trends are not necessarily driven by women, but it's a couple's thing. And I think those who are in decision making also need to give it a more comprehensive look and address some of those anxieties in the economy, education, childcare, that then drive couples and individuals to choose to have fewer children or not have any at all.
Well, thank you so much, Kenneth. This was a very interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That's Kenneth Juma joining us from the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya. It takes us to 10:30 Central African Time. Hey, Fizozo, that's Fia Lingwati. He's coming into our stream as well. He's going to let us know what's happening in our sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We start off with football news. South Africa's Minister of Sports, Gayton McKenzie, has weighed in on the growing public outcry over salary disparities within national football. The government questioned the football's governing body, SAFA, about the salary disparities between Amajita coach Raymond Mdaga and Bafana Bafana mentor Hugo Broos. Mdaga is reported to take home $3,000, while Broos rake in $56,000 a month. McKenzie elaborates.
He did a good job. He now qualifies for much more. He has good reason to renegotiate his package. We were not there. If he has a problem with that 50, he should not have accepted that 50,000. But it's now very popular to say, no, it's not right. This is how life works. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. Bruce negotiated $1 million. This one negotiated 50,000. Let us rather fix. He must now come back to the table and renegotiate on the basis of his win. And I'm going to support him for them to pay them more.
McKenzie says criticism about SAFA is misplaced because they are delivering on their mandate.
You know, whatever you say about SAFA, they are winning at the moment on all fronts. And we mustn't just criticize. We must also see people want to score cheap political points. Imagine the president of volleyball is a president. He gets, let's say, 50,000. Then he wants to compare him to the president of the country because they are both presidents. You can't have that. He's a coach of under 20. This is the national coach. Let us be honest about these things.
Now, cricket news. The Proteas men's cricket team, Shukri Conrad, has avoided the C word in favour of calling his players quite confident as they prepare to face Australia in the final of the ICC World Test Championship at Lord's in London. Conrad says, while the Proteas bowlers are well renowned, his batting group is less well known but has delivered the goods in the test matches when called upon. Despite finishing on top of the ICC World Test Championship points table, the Proteas know that they are ranking outside and they're going into the final of the World Test Championship. Conrad says he may not have the star batters, but is confident they will deliver when the time comes.
Obviously, the inexperience of the batters is very apparent in terms of number of tests played, rankings on the ICC ranking. So I think it's very normal to chat about the bowlers when you've got guys like Kagiso Rabada, ranked 2 in the world, and Marco and Keshav. But on the batting front, look, I think there's a quiet confidence amongst the batting group. They come off a lot of confidence, having gotten hundreds, different players at different stages. So, yeah, whilst they might not have the superstar names amongst them, I think as a collective, we're pretty confident.
As to the Proteas' chances, Conrad is hoping to use the Proteas' tenacity to probe for any vulnerability in the ranks of the Beggy Green.
We're young, and that's all that matters. We get a chance to walk away as the World Test champions, playing Australia. Doesn't get any bigger than that. So, yeah, what's gone before counts for absolutely nothing at the minute. And we're quietly confident going into this game that we can pull it over. They're a confident bunch. We play well as a unit, and if there are any vulnerabilities amongst them, I'm sure we'd be able to exploit that.
The match between the two nemesis will begin at 11:30 Central African Time. Let's wrap up with volleyball. The Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparations for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championships set to take place at Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani in Nairobi from the 4th to the 9th of July. Head coach Mossad El-Wati confirmed that training is already underway with players grouped to work on fitness and technical skills. A provisional squad of 30 athletes, both men and women, is currently in training, from which 14 players will be selected to represent Rwanda at the continental event. These two finalists they will automatically qualify for the 2026 Sitting Volleyball World Championship scheduled to take place in Hangzhou, China from the 10th to the 17th of July. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
The Shy Guy, a Morning Switch.
Have you ever listened to a song and then it gives you goosebumps? Cause it takes you way back in the 80s. My goodness. Hey baby. You hear Yvonne Chaga Chaga there. I wanna talk to the DJ. And then the DJ goes like, hey baby, I've got you on the other side. Huh? There were no WhatsApps then, right? There were no sliding in the DMs at the time. Oh man.
Your weekend mornings are activated with the Shy Guy on the Morning Switch. On the move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #on the move.
Thank you, Fikile Lingwati, for that sports update. We keep things moving with Thabiso Lehoko, who's giving us our latest business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Palesa, and good morning. The South African Parliament has highlighted the urgent need to hold accountable those responsible for creating ghost positions in government departments. This after Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Jan de Villiers, revealed that a syndicate was orchestrating the creation of ghost employees through systemic corruption. He says that the extent of the problem is unknown. De Villiers has also stressed the importance of conducting physical audits to detect ghost employees on the payroll.
We suspect that this type of syndicated criminal activity in the state is actually supported by way more individuals, because you almost need an ecosystem to keep those people on the system and keep paying them their salaries and their leave days and their bonus. So I think that identifying the ghost is one thing, but very importantly, there needs to be investigation and prosecution and then punishment. People going to jail for the creation of these ghost employees.
Results of a study that the South African Financial Services Group, Nedbank, and the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers has released has highlighted the challenges that local manufacturers are facing. They include pressure to shift to low-carbon operations or risk losing their competitiveness, as well as a lack of access to affordable technology and capacity to measure emissions. These have led to uncertainty around reporting frameworks and the cost of compliance. Trade, Industry and Competition Department's Lester Bower.
But it is always not an easy space, because we do have to deal with the issues of multilateralism. So we sit in the WTO, so we cannot just ignore that we signed to these things. We cannot just tomorrow go and all of a sudden do as our esteemed world president and put 110 tariffs there on the world and say we're going to stop everybody from coming in here.
Zimbabwe has called on miners to process more minerals domestically. The Minister of Mines, Winston Chitando, says he will ban the export of lithium concentrates from 2027 as the country extends its push for more local processing. Lithium miners in Zimbabwe, who are mostly from China, have been exporting concentrates to their home country. The Food and Agriculture Organization says that the camel deserves a grand celebration for its contribution to existence. This is the regional forum on the International Year of Camelids and Sustainable Livestock Transformation in Africa is underway in Nairobi, Kenya. The 3-day high-level event is organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and African Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources. Africa is home to over 80% of the world's one-humped camels. Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa, Abebe Haley Gabriel.
One is to celebrate very important animal in Africa, particularly in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, in North Africa, and this is camel. This is the International Year of Camel, and we thought it deserves a regional forum to celebrate its contribution.
The dollar and China's yuan were steady as the teams from US and China concluded trade talks in London, hinting at a thaw in a damaging trade war between the world's two largest economies, but offering scant detail. The country's officials agreed on a framework based on a trade truce reached last month in Geneva that would resolve China's export restrictions on rare earth minerals and magnets and remove some U.S. export restrictions that were recently put in place. China's Vice Commerce Minister Li Chang'an said that the next step would be to take the agreed framework back to their respective heads of state. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 450. Botswana 13.21. Kenya 128 shilling 417 and Zambia 25 kwacha. The BRICS countries, I'll start in India. The dollar there will cost you 85 rupees 59, China 7 yuan 18, Brazil 5 real 56, in South Africa 17 rand 71, and in Russia the dollar will cost you 78 rubles 63. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities markets: gold $3,338, platinum $1,221 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $66.71 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoku.
business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani? Claro que sou eu. Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma. Eu amo música africana. Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. Until 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones, on air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepu Kholikweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m., 5 till 6. We put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joel Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochi Tika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones, on air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and
This one is titled You're tuned into Channel Africa right here on the move right here on Channel Africa. Of course, we're coming to you live from the SABC studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. You know, it's always interesting, Ben, to see the differences between how we interact with the world in our different generations. Here in our team, we're both millennials. In fact, the rest of our team is also filled with millennials. But it's also nice to see the different ways in which my son does things because he's a Gen Zer, and how, you know, my mom does things because she's from a different generation as well. I'm going to ask you this, right, a baby boomer. So I'm going to ask you this. Show me with your hands the TikTok trend where they put like people from the same family or maybe just from different generations to do these certain things, even in the office, right? Yeah. So from your perspective, use your hands and show me how you pick up the phone and put it down.
How pick up the
Show
phone?
me, yeah. Show me how you pick up the phone and how you put it down. To use your hands, the hand gesture for picking up the phone and putting it down. And no, like being on a call. Be on a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then put the phone down.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the hand gesture for rolling down your window?
It is.
No, yeah. You see, you have to think about it, and I don't want that because you have to do the different one.
No.
Okay,
It doesn't work like that.
nonetheless, because you took a second to actually think about that one. But all these gestures, right? We've done things differently.
So what did
in
you
our
think
time.
I was gonna do instead of pressing? 'Cause I did
roll down the window.
Okay,
right?
no.
Because most millennials and people who are older than millennials, when they say use a hand gesture for rolling down the window, they'll usually just like swing their hands like they're rolling it down.
I started driving in the millennial area.
Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. But did you start interacting with cars in the millennial area? Like for example, I started driving in my
A taxi is very rare.
Okay, yeah, of course, but you have to roll down your own window. Okay, I'll say, when I was younger in my dad's car, we obviously had to roll down the window and use this position. In your home, I don't know when you were growing up if you had, a telephone, and we've had like a telephone when I was growing up. So when you'd pick up the phone, you'd, pick it up with sort of two of your fingers up and then put it down where the telephone goes down. And so things are very different, but also how we've interacted with technology is very different from how people interact now. I grew up where we had like a computer, the computer with the big back, the white computer, the small screen, and the manual keypad, not these slick computers that we have now. And all we could do on that computer, no flat screens, all we could do on that computer was listen to audios and play like Tetris games, very simple things that my sister and I enjoyed doing. So I'm speaking about that, how different generations have interacted with technology. And let's listen to this guy who also was thinking about that same thing.
You ever think about the fact that millennials had computer class in high school and middle school where we literally had to learn how to use a computer and type? Nowadays, kids just get handed an iPhone at 3 months old and know how to use it proficiently.
Absolutely.
Literally. So if you have a child right now, especially yours, who's almost turning 1, they probably, I don't know how much phone use you've given them, but if you were to give them phone use, they'd probably know how to use that phone before they were 2 years old. Whereas,
that's why I'm avoiding that.
We went to schools with computer classes, and it wasn't anything advanced like the schools now where they have coding in school. We were just there like learning how to turn it on, turn it off, learning how to use the keyboard and learning how to type a little bit faster, and we'd get checked off of those things. How fast can you type? The QWERTY, Control Alt Delete, such simple things. Whereas if you go to school now and there's a computer lab, it's probably to learn like coding. Very advanced. I don't think it's sad for us, but it was age appropriate for us.
But I think we should, as our generation, actually get into coding. I haven't started, but we really need to. Because our careers are changing very fast and we're missing out on a lot. And I think to a large extent we need to adapt to that kind of computing, because we think like we are still relevant on Excel. Those days are dying very slowly.
It's 10:50 Central Africa time. If you exist within a landscape of like various generations, maybe your mother, your children, yourself as well, let us know the different ways in which you guys are interacting with the technology that you use on a normal basis. Let's keep things moving, of course, right here on The Move. Join our live stream on Facebook, on Instagram, as well as on YouTube.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Alors peut-on considérer cette décision comme un désengagement durable des États-Unis vis-à-vis du développement africain, ou s'agit-il d'un simple réalignement stratégique?
Bon, ça peut être les deux à la fois. Donc, au lieu de donner de l'argent à la Banque africaine de développement pour partager en vrac, ils préfèrent maintenant donc cibler les pays partenaires en Afrique. Ça, c'est pour le réalignement stratégique. Alors, et aussi, ce n'est pas un désengagement durable, mais je pense que dans les 2 ou 3 prochaines années, il veut d'abord remettre de l'ordre dans ses affaires.
Vue d'Afrique, du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa. With Tebogo Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m.
5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color.
Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba.
We go to Eastern Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m.
Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9.
We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia, 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla.
And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines
with Shailen Dikumana, 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa.
Across borders, across time zones.
On air, online.
This is Channel Africa.
Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising.
Wake up with Rise and Shine, 6 till 9.
Peter and Asanda, as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day.
At mid-morning,
we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people,
and the things that make Africa smile.
12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tebogo Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m.
5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color.
Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba.
We go to Eastern Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m.
Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9.
We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia, 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla.
And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines
with Shailen Dikumana, 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa.
Across borders, across time zones.
On air, online.
This is Channel Africa.
Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising.
Wake up with Rise and Shine, 6 till 9.
Peter and Asanda, as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day.
At mid-morning,
we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people,
and the things that make Africa smile.
12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tebogo Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m.
5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color.
Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba.
We go to Eastern Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m.
This one in studio. This is Mansa, one of our favorite ones by Bisa Kide, a Ghanaian solo singer, record producer. We love this one very, very much right here on Channel Africa. You are listening to Channel Africa on DSTV Channel 802, OpenView 628 on www.channelafrica.co.za and also that SABC Plus app. And for you streaming live with us, thank you for joining us in that particular live stream. And I want to move into this next topic that we're going to look at just in the next hour. I've heard this idea of eating disorders, and I'm not quite sure what people mean by eating disorders. I think people generalize, and we easily go to, people who are just wanting to be super thin, anorexia. That's kind of the one that we go for, and then maybe obesity. But is that just the two extremes of eating disorders, and are those the only ones that kind of like define what a eating disorder is? I think actually when we do assume that's the case, we make a lot of mistakes, because there are a lot of disorders that we have in our eating habits that actually have huge health impacts, right? So like for instance, what we eat, I think sometimes the selection of what we eat can be equated to an eating disorder. Like now, I mean, I was in hospital for a heart thing. I was getting a heart attack, but I was like, why? And people were like, not quite sure, right? Not really. It's in your genes, or it's like something that probably you had, that your father had, or my dad doesn't have a heart issue, right? Yeah. But then when I investigated, I'm like, yeah, also I eat terrible, like to a certain degree, right? What I think is healthy eating in my books, when I research, it's like, no, what you think is healthy is actually not healthy.
You know, I think there are obviously various degrees of eating disorders, and we think that all of them are those that can be seen. So maybe the eating disorder of someone who looks like they are super thin and they might be dying and they're from an eating disorder, or someone who's really obese and you can see that. But I'm sure there's a huge landscape in between
I think so too,
of eating disorders that you can't even see, can't even recognize. But there has to be, because we all eat different, right? And it's not always healthy or unhealthy eating that makes something a disorder. And even if you're eating unhealthy, it doesn't particularly mean there's a disorder associated to it. So I think I'm more interested to find out what makes a particular eating style a disorder versus just either an healthy or unhealthy eating style.
Also, like, can an unhealthy way of living equate to an eating disorder? I think that there's a possibility of that as well.
Of course.
So, you know, as much as we're coming from two extreme dynamics, are those two differing viewpoints that both of you and I are coming from, are they a reality? And how do we actually check that out? Especially when it comes to children. I think that's also an interesting one. Children, sometimes you don't know whether they're just enjoying the food a lot, or they've got a disorder, or maybe this one is not eating because this is actually a behavior that will lead to some form of eating disorder. So also, like, seeing the early signs of that might be difficult, especially because children have different seasons and ways of eating depending on where they are in life and stages of their life. So that's also a big question.
Yeah, it's important to also, I think, recognize and understand that eating disorders actually, I don't think, have more to do with the eating itself or the eating style, but have a huge, impact on the mental health. So many eating disorders actually start with a mental health issue that, trickles into the way that you eat. So
I disagree.
Even things like anorexia, the reasons why some people actually go and have those certain eating disorders is because of certain mental health issues or certain views that they've then taken those views and put them into their eating style. But that's just my opinion. I'm not an expert.
Because I can also think like an eating disorder can lead to a mental health issue. So if you're eating too much, it can get you a point where you actually have this mental issue as well, like, oh, now I'm obese, I have to eat more, I have to eat less. I don't know. We'll find out a little bit later, because we've got so many questions around this one, and both of us are kind of like coming from different sides of the coin. But let's find out what we have in our news update. It's 1100 hours Central African time. It's 11 o'clock. Let's find out what Joalane has for us in the news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Top story is Sawa, the body of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu, will not be repatriated today, and police in LA carry out mass arrests following the introduction of a partial curfew. Good morning. The body of late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu will not be repatriated to the country today, as earlier stated in a statement. Government says this is due to consultations between the government and the family and other stakeholders that are underway. A further announcement will be made in due course as to when the body of the late former president will arrive in Zambia. As Jowilu Hodi reports, the Zambian government and Lungu's political party are at loggerheads over his funeral arrangements.
The standoff between former President Edgar Lungu's family, the government and Lungu's political party, the Patriotic Front, has left mourners confused about how exactly the former president should be honoured. Family lawyer Makebi Zulu has told the BBC that the family is not opposed to a state funeral but have insisted on choosing who will preside over it. Then there is the official book of condolence in which mourners can pay tributes to Lungu. The government has set up an official book at the lodge, but the PF has urged people to sign theirs instead at their headquarters. There was also different views on when Lungu's body should be repatriated, with the PF insisting that it wants to create a safe passage.
The war in Sudan has pushed millions to the brink, with South Darfur among the hardest hit regions. A new report by Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, Voices from South Darfur, details the violence, hunger and widespread insecurity facing civilians, particularly women and children. Sudan's conflict between the army and rival rapid support forces has displaced millions and split the country into rival zones of control, with the RSF still deeply embedded in Western Sudan. Humanitarian Affairs Advisor for MSF, Dr. Kyle McNally, elaborates.
We see staggering rates of sexual violence, and when we look at this, we see also some very concerning observations within the data. Not only do we have hundreds of survivors coming to clinic and coming for care since we opened services in the middle of last year, but what we notice is that we have high confidence that this is really just the tip of the iceberg, and we know that there's a lot of women who are unable to access care. We also know that despite the fact that the conflict has now been going on for more than 2 years, amongst the hundreds of survivors that we have now treated, we see more than 50% of those survivors have been attacked by non-civilians.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed sadness at the loss of multiple people due to heavy flooding in the Eastern Cape. 11 people are missing following heavy rains that caused severe flooding in the province yesterday. A minibus in which the deceased were travelling was swept away into a river in the colony. Most of the victims are believed to be learners. The death toll now stands at 12. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
President Ramaphosa offers his deep condolences to the bereaved families, affected communities, and Eastern Cape residents at large. These incidents and others that may unfold during winter highlights the need for South Africans to display caution, care, and cooperation as the worst impacts of winter weather take effect across the country.
Struggle stalwart Mavuso Msimang says there's a sense of urgency in South Africa to tackle the challenges that the country is facing, especially the high unemployment rate. President Ramaphosa has announced that a national convention will take place on August the 15th this year to set the agenda for a national dialogue on the country's challenges. He says all sectors of society will be given a voice to determine how problems should be addressed and how to build a better country for future generations. Msimang says an inclusive dialogue is crucial because the situation in the country is dire.
The situation is really bad. You see it in the streets. People are poor. 30 years on, really poor. In fact, statistics indicate that there's been an increase. Unemployment, I was glad the president talked about, confesses that unemployment is high and there's underemployment. Worst is that it's happening among young people. So there's really a need. I don't think we should allow this not to be successful.
Police in Los Angeles say they have carried out mass arrests following the introduction of a partial curfew in downtown districts. Protests against President Donald Trump's immigration policies are continuing, as is the political row over the deployment of the U.S. Marines and the California National Guard to the city. California Governor Gavin Newsom says the deployment has worsened the situation.
California is no stranger
to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly, but this, again, was different. What then ensued was a use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights.
Recapping the top story this hour, the body of late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu may not arrive in the country today as expected. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
All right, I love giving you guys a shout out. It's why I actually enjoy the live stream, but it's also nice hearing from you as well. I'm seeing a few ladies that are coming in. Chimwemwe, it's nice having you there. Gigi, it's good having you there. Jan, it's nice having you there. And I see the gents are still there as well. Bright, Koloko is there. Damiano Mkwate is there as well. Thank you guys for giving us your ear and your visuals there, your eyes as well. I know that we are a radio station, and sometimes it's very hard for you listening to us wherever you are to say, hey, let me go check them out on my phone. But please do that. It's always fun knowing where you're listening to us from, or just seeing that you are out there checking us out is pretty cool, knowing that you are there. You don't have to stay the whole 3 hours, and watching us on that particular stream. But if you want to, you can. That's only if you want to, but you can come in and out and just hang out with us. It's pretty cool having you there on that particular platform. We're speaking about eating disorders, and we had just a very good conversation just before the news, because I think it's a good conversation because we have our inclinations about what eating disorders are. We think we know what an eating disorder is, and I don't think we do, actually. I think Bali and I come from different sides of the spectrum, but I think none of us are wrong, none of us are right on this one, because I think eating disorders happen differently for different people, and when they occur, sometimes it's easy to pinpoint someone's failure or say you did something wrong, or like you have an eating disorder. And also we have that kind of a thing, right, where because of people's eating disorders, we think they did it to themselves, right? I think there's a biology behind certain eating disorders as well, and I think also not all eating disorders are to blame the person who's eating. So you can easily say, they eat too much. But no, it's not necessarily like that. You don't know what's happening in their bodies that's actually making them eat that much. Or some people are just like, I don't want to eat. And Palesa is like, maybe they have a mental health issue. Maybe they don't. Maybe there's something happening in their bodies that's making them feel like they don't have to eat or they don't want to eat. So there could be multiple issues. Yes, mental issues are part of the mix, and we just don't know. So we're going to try to figure that out in a few minutes' time.
Absolutely. We'll be speaking to dietitian Palesa Maleka, who's going to really help us understand the landscape of eating disorders. What are they? What they look like? And I think it's certainly, there is a huge issue of maybe not being particularly a choice, because if it was a choice, we have a choice every day to eat what we want and to eat however we see fit, but it's not particularly a disorder. So what makes a particular eating habit from a habit into a disorder? Let's unpack that in just a few minutes with Palesa Maleka. And you can of course join us on our live stream. We love having you there, as Benjamin said earlier, but you can also interact with us on our other social media platforms. We are still on X. We love to chat to you there. Use our hashtag that's on the move on that platform. At Channel Africa 1 is where you can find us. Same handle for our Instagram, same handle for our YouTube, same handle for our TikTok account as well. But on Facebook, we are just Channel Africa. So definitely, even outside of the live stream, we post the conversations there for you to interact with. But we love having you on the live stream as well. So let's keep things moving. We're in the third hour of On the Move, and the conversations are getting better.
The Morning Switch Weekend. with the Shy Guy.
Madzuka Wanji Nonse, Zukani, the Shy Guy, a morning switch.
Have you ever listened to a song and then it gives you goosebumps? It takes you way back in the 80s. My goodness. Hey, baby. You hear Yvonne Chaga Chaga there. I wanna talk to the DJ. And then the DJ goes like, hey, baby, I've got you on the other side. Huh? There were no WhatsApps then, right? There were no sliding in the TMs at the time. Oh, man.
Your weekend mornings are activated with the Shy Guy on the Morning Switch. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
Hey, it's time for our Live Well feature. This is when we think about health, but also like our physiology a lot in this conversation. And today we're speaking about eating disorders, which are often misunderstood. Maybe I'm the one misunderstanding what the conversation is. That's why we're getting some clarity. But these questions that I was asking earlier on are important because sometimes we think eating disorders are just about people who are obese or people who have anorexia, and we can't think about them in the spectrum in between those extremes. And many of us are assuming that they merely also just about the food or the desire to look a particular way. Experts say the biggest misconception with eating disorders is that their illness is about avoidance of food. Often we also think it's about too much food. For some eating disorders, they serve a purpose in chaotic or unpredictable environments. Controlling food intake becomes a form of security and reassurance. It's not about the food itself, but about the way that you eat, which represents control, coping, or even self-punishment. Eating disorders are most prevalent as well amongst teenagers and children. We've got dietitian Palesa Malekos joining us on the line. Palesa, welcome on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we think it's about a thin and fat thing, you know. You are obese. You are fat. You know, we always do that. We always stereotype things. We always put things in a box. Help us clear this out. What is an eating disorder?
An eating disorder, I think a lot of people don't know what it is that it is a serious mental health condition.
Okay, so Palesa was right. It's a mental condition.
Yes, it's a mental health condition.
Okay.
And what makes it difficult with eating disorders is that it is very difficult to diagnose. So you will need to have, like I'm a dietitian by profession, part of 80% of my job is to identify that when somebody walks into my office and once we have the conversations, I'm able to tell this does not come from a healthy place. So it is a mental health, a condition that is characterized by disturbed eating behaviors. Most importantly, also thoughts. How do you perceive food? How do you see food? What are your thought processes around food? Are food seen as something that is good or something that is bad?
Well, Palesa, I love the fact that you started there because many people think that our relationships with food only have to do with food itself. And, you know, for me, it was just something that I was thinking to say, maybe it has something to do with our mental health. Mm-hmm. And we were sort of debating that earlier. But now that you say it's a mental health condition, what is it about these mental health conditions that really affect our relationship with food?
So, we are living in a times where we have seen an increase percentage rather in mental health issues like anxiety, depression, especially after COVID. I actually was just reading something earlier here. So according to the World Health Organization, in 2019, 14 million people experienced eating disorders, including almost 3 million children and adolescents.
Yeah.
So this comes as we see an increase in eating disorders. It also comes from people who suffer from depression, people that also suffer from anxiety. So it stems from there, all of it. So because food is such an emotional thing, so if you see food as a person, as an emotional survival tool, if I can put it like that, when you're saying, oh, okay, I'm not feeling well today, I'm going to have myself some burger or some sweets or some snacks in hoping that it is going to make you feel better. So mental health, it is closely related to emotions as well. So if you see food as something that makes you sad or make you angry or make you happy and all of that, it is going to affect your mental health, and it directly and then affects how you see food and how you actually eat, which would lead to eating disorders, especially with people that either overeat. And this is something that we see a lot. But this also comes back, and I like to talk about starting from the root of the problem, right? So how we grow up in terms of like childhood. I grew up in the villages with my grandmother, and how food was treated, it was some sort of an economical status, right? That if you guys grew up eating chicken, kontlung or ekaya, you guys were from a rich family, and if you guys eat meat every day, and it was also sometimes seen as a reward system, which then affects us as we get older. So we need to go back to the roots to say, if you may be suffering for mental health issues or even eating disorders, where does it come from? How was your childhood? What was your relationship with food growing up? So it all stems from there.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, is it about, I'm still trying to think about this one, because at times I've seen it happen whereby, people find themselves like just changing the patterns of their eating. But maybe it's because of that stress, or they're feeling vulnerable, or maybe some people don't even eat because of the same mental health issues of stress around it. So people respond differently to different mental situations. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So remember, we have different types of eating disorders, right?
Sure.
So the most popular one that we have is anorexia. So where people are either literally afraid of food, they don't want to eat because food is associated with gaining weight. So they don't want to gain weight altogether, right? That's number one. So we have another one that is also quite popular, which is called bulimia nervosa. Now, this is where people are overeating, then they involuntarily vomit. So you overeat and eat and eat. Then when you're too full, you then make yourself vomit to take out the food. This makes you feel better, so that you don't feel guilty for overeating. And then some people, what they do is then they eat a lot and they're like, oh, I'm going to run 10 kilometers or run 20 kilometers. So with your question, it is different. It's either you overeat or you undereat, but it all stems from how do you feel about your body, number one. How do you feel about your body shape? Do you feel like you are too thin? Or I always tell my clients, to tell people in general, that how we think and how we perceive food, it goes back to how do we then consume our food as well. So in terms of the mental health and everything, the question that I always ask is that, are we eating to fuel our body? So when you think of food, are you saying I'm eating because I'm hungry, or you're just eating because you're bored, you're eating because you're lonely, or you see food as something that you have to do? I have to eat breakfast, I have to eat lunch, I have to eat dinner because I need energy and I need to fuel my body. That is a healthy way of looking at food. That we do not call that an eating disorder. And also we see, like I mentioned earlier, we see food as a social status as well. You know, how as Black people and how we grew up, most of us, we didn't grow up around caviars and all these fancy food as well. But as we get older, because we have access now, people tend to overeat because of that. They look back to say, I was never able to eat pizzas when I was younger. Now I'm spoiling myself. I'm going to eat everything that I want. Or you lived in a very big household where there was 10 of you and there's cousins and there was food insecurity where you had to share the food around. But now as you get older, you've got money, you stay alone. All you do, you just say, you are feeding that inner child. You are just eating and eating. And people don't realize that is a mental health problem that is then associated to how you perceive food as well.
These can easily seem like adult problems, but we know, as you highlighted, what you quoted from the World Health Organization, that eating disorders are also prevalent in teenagers, and it's very much something that we see in younger children as well. We'll expand on that after the break. Stay with us, Palesa.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The president of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Badea, Dr. Sidi Ould Tah, he is vying for the presidency of the African Development Bank, the AFDB. He positions himself as a fervent defender of economic integration and structural transformation on the African continent.
Well, I do believe that I have a 360 view of the development challenges in the continent, with my experience from both the supply side and the demand side. But more importantly, my vision is to bring on board all the stakeholders and to have a holistic approach for the development of the continent, and to develop partnership across the continent and outside the continent, bringing all the stakeholders together to work for one goal, is to make Africa green for life and livelihood of the African population.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Hashtag on the move and connect with us.
We're speaking about eating disorders today on The Move, and many of us have really preconceived stigmas about eating disorders. Why don't you just eat right? Why would you starve yourself? Why would you overeat to a point where it has become unhealthy for your body? But as we've now learned from Palesa Maleka, who is our dietitian, telling to us about this conversation, is that eating disorders are mental health conditions, and we continue to unpack this conversation with Palesa, who is still on the line with us. Palesa, let's speak a little bit about the various types of eating disorders that you have mentioned, like anorexia, like bulimia, obesity from food is one of them as well. But are there parts of eating disorders that aren't popularly known, like the anorexias that most people would have learned about, that actually look like they are normal? So are there people who have eating disorders that think that they have a healthy relationship with food?
So we do have uncommon eating disorders that are often seen as normal. The biggest one of them is diets. And we have a lot of different diets. There was a popular one that was going around, and people were on a liquid diet, people were on fruit diets. There's another one where people cut out starch and carbs from their meals. And so the biggest one that is less recognized as an eating disorder is that one. People that go on fed diets consistently. Somebody would say, oh, I'm on a diet, and the diet is like extreme, and it is also very unhealthy. In most cases, it was not even provided by a healthcare professional. They just see it on TikTok and all of those things. But to also name a few, we've got one that is called orthorexia nervosa.
Okay.
By definition, it's an unhealthy obsession with eating only pure, clean, or healthy foods. I think in most cases, we've never thought that too much of anything could be considered as a disorder. So there's a thin line between people who are obsessed with eating healthy to a point that they don't even want their food to touch anything that is unhealthy. They don't want to be around people that are eating unhealthy food. So it is an obsession. And again, remember, obsession is a mental health disorder.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with eating healthy consistently and every day. We all should be. But there's a thin line between that and obsession.
I see. Let's come into the conversation of children. Sorry to cut you off there, Palesa, because we think that all these other issues that are related to eating disorders are things that, adults would be associated with. But children can have eating disorders, especially around their teenage years. What, brings up the likelihood of a child having an eating disorder?
So besides in the households, some kids do grow up around parents that are very strict, or a mother or father who is, again, obsessed with looking a certain way. In most cases, they are like bodybuilders, or the mom is a model. We've seen that, in the previous years, where the mother actually forces the kids not to eat certain things and saying words like to them, you're going to be fat. You are not going to be beautiful if you have this and this and that. That creates a mentality from kids to say food is bad, overeating is bad, you cannot gain weight, you cannot do this and this and this and that. So that is one of the main reasons as well in children. And again, at schools as well, kids pick on each other. So that also happens a lot when they're going to see you that you're very skinny, and they start picking you on that, or you are fat, or you are too big, and all those things. What they do to kids is that they associate those things with food. So if I eat a lot, I won't be called skinny. Then they start overeating because they don't want to be called skinny at school.
Yeah.
If they are big, again, whether it is normal big or it is obesity or it's overweight, kids don't know the difference. They're just picking up on you, and they start going home and saying, I don't want to eat, and they start starving themselves altogether because they're being picked up at school as well. So this may develop in children as young as 8 or 9.
I see. Well, that is quite worrying. But when maybe a parent, or maybe if you are an adult and you and maybe the people around you recognize that there's something wrong with how you're eating, or maybe there've been dramatic changes in your body, no matter what end of the scale that is, how do you start treating an eating disorder, especially because it's not just food related? So I can come to a dietitian, but you do say that it's a mental health disorder. So what are the various ways that can be tackled when trying to treat an eating disorder?
So the first things first, what you need to do is to get to the person to feel safe, number one. And number two, for if it's you or the other person, to be able to be aware. In most cases, people are not aware. So you approach this with caution, with love, and so that the person can actually be able to say, oh, I didn't know I have an eating disorder. Or you look for the signs when you see that. Number one, what you do is obviously you do need to take them to, or if it's a child, you need to take them to a clinical dietitian or a nutritionist. Or if it's you take yourself there. But what we do in most cases, like with me in the practice, we work with psychologists. It all starts there. The minute when I sit down with someone, I'm able to tell that, okay, this is something that stems deeper from that. Then when you are referred to a psychologist, we're referring you in saying that this person has got an eating disorder. Then the psychologist will be able to assist from that and treat it with seeing it in a broader way to see that where does the problem actually come from. Then we have to treat the source first before we get to the food part. So psychology is only, therapy is your start point, and then other things afterwards.
Just quickly, let's wrap it up. I mean, can an eating pattern lead to an eating disorder?
So an eating disorder, it is broadly around eating behaviors.
Okay,
and
cool.
Eating behaviors are patterns.
So let me not complicate it. Yeah, it is what it is. Because I was wondering earlier on if maybe if you eat a particular way, can that lead to a disorder? Maybe you start getting particular habits over time. But I'm sure that that is a way of seeing that there's something happening that's wrong in the process of your eating habits. But let's leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you, Palesa, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That is dietitian Palesa speaking about eating disorders. An interesting conversation there. I think there's a lot to learn about that. It's 11:30 Central Africa time. Fikile Lungwati is back with our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And in this hour, we kick off with football news. Eswatini go head-to-head with Tanzania in a must-win match at the Free State Stadium in the final Group C fixture of the ongoing COSAFA Cup. Eswatini is fully aware that anything short of victory will draw the curtain on their campaign. Seeded into one of 2 3-team brackets, the Kings Shield currently sits second after collecting a solitary point from their opener and must now edge past the already eliminated Taifa Stars of Tanzania to secure a place in the knockout. Eswatini find themselves walking a fine line once again in the pursuit of a knockout berth, having not progressed past the group stage since 2022. With just 2 matches available to stake their claim for a top spot, Sihlangu Semnegati were forced to settle for a point in the opening fixture against table toppers Madagascar. And Bafana coach Hugo Bros says choosing a 23-player squad for World Cup qualifiers in September will be difficult as he has a large pool of players to choose from. He was speaking after a 2-0 win over Mozambique in a friendly encounter played at Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in South Africa's Limpopo province last night. Bruce says he has plenty of players to choose from to form a squad.
Everything is positive, and this is something that will make my job very difficult in the next months. We have 23 players there. You know that there are still maybe also 23 who are with their club, still with their club, or who are at home. So that makes that you can choose now in between 40 players. This will be difficult because you have to drop players in September. Players maybe who deserved it, but okay. I have to make choices.
Bruce says now is the time for transition to replace older players with younger ones.
The selection of March, I think there were 12 or 13 players around 30 and over. It's time to start and little by little to get the team younger. We have to drop down others, but I've never been afraid to drop players. We will do it now also and try to do it now also, even when there are important games for World Cup qualifiers.
On to rugby news, the junior Springbok head coach Kevin Foote has announced his World Rugby Under-20 Championship squad. A tournament is expected to start on the 29th of June to the 19th of July. According to Foote, the final selection process was a very difficult task and he and the coaching staff are very pleased with the final squad. Lock, Riley Norton, will retain his captaincy alongside Piwa Yinkosi Gupega, prop, and Ian van der Merwe, fly half, have not played for the South African under-20s before, while Jakob Krobelaar, lock, Stephanus Linde, number 8, and Jaco Williams, outside back, are back in the squad after missing the recent under-20 rugby championship in Gqeberha. The squad will continue with their preparations in Stellenbosch until their departure to Italy on the 24th of June. And finally, with volleyball news, the Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparations for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championship set to take place at Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani in Nairobi from the 4th to the 9th of July. Head coach Mossad El-Waiti confirmed that training is already underway with players grouped to work on fitness and technical skills. A provisional squad of 30 athletes, both men and women, is currently in training, from which 14 players will be selected to represent Rwanda at the continental event. The 2 finalists in both the men and women's categories will earn automatic qualification for the 2026 Sitting Volleyball World Championship, scheduled to take place in Hangzhou, China, from the 10th to the 17th of July. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Alors peut-on considérer cette décision comme un désengagement durable des États-Unis vis-à-vis du développement africain ou s'agit-il d'un simple réalignement stratégique?
Bon, ça peut être les deux à la fois. Donc, au lieu de donner de l'argent à la Banque africaine de développement pour partager en vrac, ils préfèrent maintenant donc cibler les pays partenaires en Afrique. Ça, c'est pour le
réalignement stratégique.
Alors, et aussi, ce n'est pas un désengagement durable, mais je pense que dans les 2 ou 3 prochaines années, il veut d'abord remettre de l'ordre dans ses affaires.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Thank you, Figile Ngwati. Let's keep things moving. Tabiso Lohoko has our latest and final business news for the morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Palesa, and good morning. The South African Parliament has highlighted the urgent need to hold accountable those responsible for creating ghost positions in government departments. This after Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, Jan de Villiers, revealed that a syndicate was orchestrating the creation of ghost employees through systemic corruption. He says that the extent of the problem is unknown. De Villiers has also stressed the importance of conducting physical audits to detect ghost employees on the payroll.
We suspect that this type of syndicated criminal activity in the state is actually supported by way more individuals, because you almost need an ecosystem to keep those people on the system and keep paying them their salaries and their leave days and their bonus. So I think that identifying the ghost is one thing, but very importantly, there needs to be investigation and prosecution and then punishment. People going to jail for the creation of these ghost employees.
Zimbabwe has called on miners to process more minerals domestically. The Minister of Mines, Winston Chitando, says he will ban the export of lithium concentrates from 2027 as the country extends its push for more local processing. Lithium miners in Zimbabwe, who are mostly from China, have been exporting concentrates to their home country. The Food and Agriculture Organization says that the camel deserves a grand celebration for its contribution to existence. This is the regional forum on the International Year of Camelids and Sustainable Livestock Transformation in Africa is underway in Nairobi, Kenya. The 3-day high-level event is co-organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the African Union Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources. Africa is home to over 80% of the world's one-humped camels. Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa, Abebe Haley Gabriel.
One is to celebrate very important animal in Africa, particularly in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, in North Africa, and this is camel. This is the International Year of Camel, and we thought it deserves a regional forum to celebrate its contribution.
Sterling fell against a firmer dollar as markets geared up for a multi-year UK spending review due later in the day from British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves, who is set to reveal how public spending will be divided up. The pound was lost down 0.2% versus the dollar at 1.3472 US dollars and was weaker against the euro, which rose 1% to 84.68 pence. The dollar urged up against a range of currencies after US and Chinese trade representatives wrapped up 2 days of talks in London where they agreed on a framework to bring their tariff truce back on track. European shares have been mostly steady as investors awaited a crucial U.S. inflation report and weighed the potential of a U.S.-China trade agreement. The pan-European stock 600 was little changed at 553.88 points. Markets remained on edge ahead of May U.S. inflation data due later in the day as investors watched for signs that U.S. tariffs had begun to filter into the economy. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 450. Botswana 13.21. Kenya 128 shilling 417 and Zambia 25 kwacha. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 56. So Russia, 78 rubles 63. India, 85 rupees 59. China, 71.18. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 71. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Gold, $3,338. Platinum, $1,221 per ounce. Brent crude oil, $66.71 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hugo.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Embrace our young voices. This month, Channel Africa, celebrating Youth Month.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Hawa wa Afrika Kusini wenye asili ya kizungu ambao wamepewa ukimbizi huko nchini Marekani. Je, nini chanzo cha wao kuomba ukimbizi nchini Marekani?
Wenyewe wajaomba ukimbizi. Kuna shirika fulani inaitwa AfriForum, shirika mbili za wazungu ambao wanatetea haki ya wazungu hapa, AfriForum na Solidarity. Hao walienda Marekani kufanya kampeni kusema kwamba wazungu wananyanyaswa hapa Afrika Kusini, na walivyofanya hiyo kampeni serikali iweze kuwafuatilia kujua nini ambacho mnasema kwamba mnanyanyaswa.
Kuna namna ya wao kwamba wamepoteza uraia wa Afrika Kusini, na je, endapo Trump akamaliza muda wake madarakani, uhalali wao wa kuishi nchini Marekani ukoje?
Itakuwa vigumu, kifupi itakuwa vigumu wenyewe kupoteza uraia wao.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama. Kumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochi Tika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tebucho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joel Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m. Mariamo Kumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour.
That one is titled My Boss. In fact, I should actually stop arguing with Palesa. She's usually right and I'm usually wrong.
Well, I don't want to say it, Beji. I really don't want to say it, but yeah, it is true. Sometimes I let you be wrong, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'm gonna allow Benji to be wrong. The expert will prove him right.
Yeah, actually, thanks for that, because I'm always proven right by the expert.
Yes. But that's how I like it. I don't like the back and forth. I don't want us to be arguing senselessly over something the expert hasn't confirmed.
I need to play the role of devil's advocate. That's my role in this show, to be the one that gets that different kind of view so we can contest it. What do you think about that conversation? I think it is kind of interesting, because what is the fact that stood out for me was that you never know until someone can say this is actually a problem.
Yeah, until someone says there's a worrying thing. And I think obviously there's so many conversations to have around this. I remember watching, there's a TV reality show, an American TV reality show called My 600 Pound Life, which follows the lives of people who weigh 600 pounds and more, so really obese people. And they also go through a journey of trying to not just lose the weight, but to get, surgery, weight loss surgery, and they have to lose weight before they get some of that weight loss surgery. And there's been another theme that I saw recurring in that particular series, because I remember watching an episode when one was showing their pictures from childhood and how they grew up, and they said quite distinctly that when they were around 7 or 8 years, unfortunately they were sexually assaulted by a family member, and that's when they started overeating. So trauma, overeating or eating disorders can also be a trauma response from traumatic things that have happened in your life.
Yeah. Do you think we understand eating disorders properly, or do you think we need to learn more? But what are your thoughts as well around different eating disorders? WhatsApp us on +2763 406 9126. It's 48 minutes past 11 o'clock. We're about to get out of here. Remember, coming up is the Africa Update at midday Central African time. But now let's go back to the music. Vanessa D has this one titled Nobody But Me, featuring K.O.
And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana, 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones, on air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palesa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money. Africa in Business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6. We put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to Eastern Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochi Tika, 7 till 8 p.m. Mariamo Kumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some Lucifer knowledge. Kalodishkopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones, on air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the...
And Vanessa MD featuring KO. That one is titled Nobody But Me. Let's go for a break. We'll be back.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The president of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Badea, Dr. Sidi Ould Tah, he is vying for the presidency of the African Development Bank, the AF.
Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only
stakeholders and to have a holistic approach for the development of the continent and to develop partnerships across the continent and outside the continent, bringing all the stakeholders together to work for one goal is to make Africa great for life and livelihood of the African population.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Chinyanja, French, no time to waste. Be on the move with Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens. And Channel Africa makes you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and the show of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act.
Kajanine, beautiful one there, titled Bwana. Hey, how are you, Lulu?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Good, good, good. I see you are warm today.
Yes, the sun is giving the illusion that it's warmer than yesterday, and it's not.
It is a little bit warmer today. Yesterday was hectic.
Because there was no sunlight until quite mid-morning.
And the evening last night. I heard a very tragic story about a missing school bus in the Eastern Cape with the floods.
Yeah, we are going to be speaking about that today.
Okay.
And the loss of life, children, including the taxi driver or the bus driver. They were also found in the waters earlier on, just before coming through here. So, there's a lot happening on that front. I mean, the snow that was in the Eastern Cape. I mean, the Free State. It's we've seen snow before in terms of, when they say a little bit of snow, but this is not a little bit of snow. No, this is a lot of snow. Yeah. And then also we're going to be focusing on Zambia's former president, the late Edgar Lungu. There is a tug of war between the government of Zambia, the family, and his political party. So we're going to be speaking to our correspondent there, Arthur Davis Sukopo, who'll unpack for us exactly what this means, because there's a repatriation process. And as well, with the government announcing that there would be an official funeral, but with the tensions that had been there, just towards the end of his life.
On celebrating him or not?
This is what a state funeral, an official funeral, but because now there were issues between the late president and the current government. So Arthur will unpack for us exactly what this means, in that aspect. And then in the Eastern Cape, we're speaking to the spokesperson, Kuselwa Ranchi, and they'll unpack for us exactly what the Eastern Cape government will be doing to assist the families who've lost their loved ones, and with the continued search for other bodies that might still be found. So a lot happening on that front. I saw earlier the Premier of the Eastern Cape province on the ground there where the floods are at their highest. And all this and a lot more coming up on Africa Update.
Well, thank you so much, Lulu. We're looking forward to that. Stay with Lulu from midday Central African time to 1 o'clock. She'll make sure that you get the latest news of what's happening here in Africa. Well, let's leave you with this one. It's Gyaki. It's called Something. Until next time, God bless.
Flip the music.
Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it.
Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by The Upside with me, Debufole Kuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Mgubeli.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel, and art and culture, this is exactly the place to be.
If it's hip-hop's happening, we are talking about it. We talk
for business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future.